Homestead, and welcome back. So today I'm going to show you one of probably my most well-used recipes in the gluten-free world in our house. And it is my everyday sandwich bread. So I started using or not buying store-bought gluten-free bread about 2 years ago. And I've really never looked back besides the occasional time that we're on vacation or something like that. I always make at least 4 loaves a week for our 4 people in our family that use it. And it's really, really simple once you get into the hang of it. You do need about 2 hours to make this bread. That's about an hour rise time, and then it takes about 50 minutes to cook. It's really easy to throw together. Before I share the recipe, I wanted to share some of the equipment that I use when I make my bread. The first thing is my stand mixer with the paddle attachment. I always use my stand mixer. I think I've said this in videos prior. It's my workhorse of the kitchen. I use it for everything. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can use a hand mixer and that'll work just the same. Another thing that's really important with this bread is a certain kind of bread pan, and this is called a USA pan. I bought them on Amazon. I have 2 because I make 2 loaves at a time usually. And the difference between this bread pan and just a regular bread pan is the sides. So as you can see, the sides are a lot taller. When your bread is ready to go into the oven to rise, it's going to be like a cake batter. It's not going to form into a loaf of bread. And that's where this pan comes into play. It really helps to keep the bread shaped right and keep it into a loaf all the way until the cooling process. And then the final thing that I use to make my bread is a kitchen scale. It definitely, I don't really even have a cup measurement for you. It's going to be all off of weight when you're weighing the flours. That's something that's really important with gluten-free. There's a lot of times that you can just substitute out with a certain all-purpose flour. For breads, it really just doesn't work that way. I tried so many recipes using an all-purpose gluten-free flour, and they never turn out. And a lot of that is because all-purpose gluten-free flours are very different than a regular all-purpose flour without the gluten in it. And so you just are not going to get a great product. So every day, how many cups of flour I use may be different in my recipe, and that's why it's really, really important to use a scale, and we're going to do ounces in our flour in putting it all together. Okay, so I have about 3/4 a cup of warm water. Now you don't want this too hot and you don't want it too cold. You want it just right, and that's just warm where you can stick your finger in it, you feel the warmth, but it's not burning to the touch. Otherwise you'll kill your yeast. I'm gonna go ahead and put my 3/4 a cup of warm water right into my mixer, and then I'm going to put in 2.5 teaspoons of yeast. Now this is active dry yeast, and the importance of this step is to make sure that your yeast is alive. And so you're going to go ahead and proof your yeast right here in your stand mixer before adding any other ingredients. If your yeast does not get foamy and bubbly, then you don't have good active dry yeast, and it's time to throw it out and get new yeast. So this is a good determining step if your bread is going to rise and be good. And then I have about 3 tablespoons of honey, and I'm going to add that in. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn this on for just a minute and let it mix up. And then I'm going to move on to the next step while my yeast proofs. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to measure out your flour and add all of your dry ingredients into this bowl. So I have on my kitchen scale just a regular glass bowl, and you want it set to ounces. So mine is already set. And then you're going to go ahead and tare it so that it's back to 0, and it's not measuring your bowl as well. Otherwise, you're not going to get the correct measurement. Okay, now you're going to put in 6 ounces of brown rice flour. You could use millet flour. You can use white rice flour. What I have here is brown rice flour. And I buy all of my bread making flours in bulk on Azure Standard, which I'll put a link in the description. And this, see, I got a little bit too much because I was chatting. And we've tried all of those flours. So we've tried white rice, we've tried millet, we've tried brown rice, and we like them all. Millet's a little bit strong tasting, but we typically go with the brown rice flour because that's usually in stock and easy to get. If I can't get it and I can get white rice, we'll go with that as well. You might just change, the color of the bread might change just slightly from that. And then you're gonna go ahead and put in 4 ounces of tapioca flour. So I am going to tear it again so it's back to 0, and I'm just gonna add the tapioca flour right on top. Again, I get this on Azure Standard. And oops, got a little too much again. And this is where you just can't measure with a measuring cup of how much. You're gonna have to weigh it out. That's gonna give you the best results in the bread. Okay. Now, because there is no gluten in this, you have to have something that binds it all together, and that's for the xanthan gum. So you're gonna go ahead and add in 2 teaspoons of xanthan gum. And this I usually buy at my local grocery store, or I'll even buy it on Amazon if I can't find it at the grocery store. And you're gonna put in 1 teaspoon of salt. And then you're gonna put in a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Oops. And now you're just gonna mix this all up. You no longer need your kitchen scale, so you can push that out of the way. And I'm just gonna mix this all up so that everything is incorporated. And my yeast is nice and foamy and bubbly, so I'm gonna go ahead and add this right on in. Okay. Now, move some of these out of the way. I'm gonna add in 3 eggs. Now this recipe is definitely dairy-free and gluten-free, but it is not egg-free. I've never tried it with like an egg replacer, which please comment below if you do try it with that, because I'd love to know how that turns out. But I have also used duck eggs in this, and duck eggs are amazing. They really give it this light, airy feel, texture, and we really like it as well. These are just 3 chicken eggs, and we're gonna go ahead and add 3 chicken eggs right to it. And then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. And 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Now you can use any kind of cooking oil that you want. I highly recommend staying away from vegetable oils or the fake oils. I would recommend using like a avocado oil or an olive oil or something like that. Okay, so we want 3 tablespoons of this. And then all you're going to do is just mix everything up. So this is where your stand mixer becomes your workhorse, and you don't have to stand there mixing it yourself. So you want it to go for about 3 to 4 minutes and make a really nice thick cake batter like dough. Okay, so now it's gone for about 3 minutes or so, and it's become a good, oops, locked it, cake batter. So I'm gonna show it to you here so you can see the consistency that you want. And this is gonna give you a light, airy type dough. So as you can see, it's not gonna form a loaf like a regular gluten bread. It's going to be like a cake batter. And then I have my pan here, and I've just really liberally buttered it. So I took a paper towel and I rubbed all the sides and the bottoms down with some soft butter. And this will just help it to, when you dump it out, it's just gonna come right out and nothing's gonna stick to it. Okay, so now I'm just going to use this rubber spatula to get off all the sides, and I just kind of plop it on in. And then I go ahead and space it out and make it kind of flat and fill all the corners. As it's rising, it is going to do that for you. And then I'm going to go ahead, so this is how it looks now, and I'm going to go ahead and stick it in my oven with a towel, clean towel over it with the oven light on. Now here's a little trick for you to make your rising time go faster. I will turn my oven on to the lowest setting while I'm making the batter. And for me, that's 180 degrees. And then I go ahead and turn it off once it reaches that. If I feel it's too hot, I will crack the door and let a little bit of the heat escape. But that gets it really nice and warm, and it rises faster when you do it that way. So I will stick it in here, and then I will show you what it looks like once it's rose enough to be able to bake. Okay, so the bread has rose in the oven for about an hour, maybe a little bit more because it's cold in here today. But the turning the oven on and then turning it off trick really does help to speed up the process. But this is about where you want it, and you want it to get right up onto the edge here. And now I'm going to bake it in a 350 degree oven for 15 minutes. When it comes out, I'm going to go ahead and dump it out immediately onto a wire rack to cool. Okay, so the bread just came out of the oven. And here is probably the most important step when you make this bread is once you pull it out of the oven, you immediately want to remove it from the pan and put it on a wire rack to cool completely. Because if it dry or cools inside of that pan, you're gonna get a really gummy texture inside. So immediately remove it and put it on here. And then tip number 2, that's really important, do not cut it until it is completely cool, which takes about 2 hours. Any sooner than that, you will get gummy results inside as well. I will slice this up, and then I just store it right on my counter, not in the refrigerator, for about 3 to 4 days. Usually the first day and second day are best for sandwiches. After that, it's really good as toast. Once you've toasted it, it's starting to get a little bit harder. If you want to make a double batch, which I usually do, you can slice it up and stick it in the freezer, and it thaws out just as good and soft that way as well. But store it on your counter in a Ziploc bag, and you are good to go. Enjoy this gluten-free bread.